Hi, it's Amy with Mindful Art Studio, and I want to talk with you a little bit today about the power of starting simple. Why starting simple matters. So, what I find for myself and a lot of my students is that there's this tendency to kind of sit down and say, all right, I want to create this really incredible piece. It's going to be a masterpiece. It's going to have this and this and this, or these skills that are still sort of far beyond me. And before you know it, it's like feeling very crippling and you really don't want to create at all. Versus if you give yourself a simple invitation, like, what if I just, right? And these things that come to mind when you think, well, I could just do this or I could just do that. Those are the keys in my experience. Those are the little invitations in your own mind that you really want to hear and pay attention to. Well, what if I just sat down and did a pattern of circles? Or what if I just sat down and drew my dog? What if I just sat down and drew a picture of my breakfast, or drew a series of leaves, or painted the colors that I see in the leaves outside, and just start there, right? Those I'll just start there invitations are these little inroads that we can give ourselves into our art practice, versus when we start off with the grand plan. For a lot of us, not everybody, but for a lot of us, it can just be so intimidating and overwhelming that we don't ever get started on anything at all, and we just put it off. So I really love the idea of giving myself simple, tiny little invitations, because it just gets my foot in the door and gets me started making. And once we kind of start our creative engines that way, it gets them roaring. And then you want to make more and more, in my experience. The other thing I really like to take advantage of in my art practice is layers. And there's lots of ways to take advantage of layers in art, but the way that I do it is by layering simple things. So I'll layer my slow drawings together with writing, or layers of paint, paper cut. I'll layer in, I love to play with elements that are kind of like the pop-up books that you had maybe as a kid or have seen before, where there's little windows or doors or pockets, flaps, little surprises that come to you throughout the book. Well, those offer lots and lots of space for layering. So I might have a slow drawing on the page, or maybe a collage of slow drawings. Then there might be a layer of tracing paper with some sort of mark making on top of it. And then maybe there's another piece that I've done on watercolor paper pasted over that. And so you kind of build these layers, and maybe all of that can be seen through a little window that's cut in the page before it, so that as you turn the page, you are welcomed into this beautiful surprise. And maybe there's a paper cut screen that lets you peek through a little bit, and then as you turn the page, it reveals so much more, so that it's a dynamic piece that keeps changing as you, as the viewer, interact with the piece and turn each page. But see, that's the kind of thing that I find exciting, right? So this idea that we can start with something very simple, like I'll sit down, I don't have a purpose. I just know that, for example, I want to draw this pattern that's kind of based off a really beautiful fungus that looks a bit like a flower. And so I want to play with that form. And so that's all I do. That's all I've kind of invited myself to do. It's a very simple invitation. And I don't need to know where it's going. I don't need to know what it's for. I just need to know that I'm in that moment, drawing, practicing, noticing what it feels like, and enjoying the process. And that's, for me, really the key. The more that I focus on process and slow my process down and just be present to what I'm doing through the senses, the more I enjoy it, the more joy that fills my art practice, and the more joy I feel as I do it. And then, of course, that's a positive feedback loop. And so I want to come back again and again. And then when I want to start playing in the way I've told you about, I have all of these elements that can combine in surprising, exciting ways that even I don't know how it's going to happen. So it's really fun and exciting. And I do this in my journals. I do this on pieces that go on, paper that could be framed potentially. So it's something very dynamic. So I'd invite you to sit down, if you wish, and either draw or write about some ways that you could give yourself simple invitations. Probably as you're watching and listening to this video, it's sparked a few ideas for you. So pull out your journal, and if you are someone who likes to think in writing, then let's create some bullet points, and you can just jot down a bunch of the ideas that came to your mind. If you're someone who likes to draw through it, you can make some thumbnail sketches, or a combination of the two, but start to sketch out the ideas that have come to your mind as you've listened to me. Then you can look at those ideas, and this is idea generation for you, at least the way that I do it. You can look at those ideas and start to riff off of the ideas that you've written down, right? Like, how could you vary that idea, right? So maybe some of the ideas that came to you in terms of the simplest invitation you could give yourself, maybe it was, well, I could just cover a page with the color variations that I see in the lemon that I have when I have my tea in the morning, right? So yes, it's yellow, but you've noticed that there's some yellow and chartreuse, and it goes into a sort of green tone, right? So you have been curious about this, and so you just are going to paint that color variation on the page, and that's all you need to do, right? So writing down all those ideas and then starting to ask yourself, well, what if I varied that idea? What would I do with it? You could also use that technique to ask yourself, what could I do with that, right? Like, what if I layered something over that? Or you can leave it more open and see, as you collect more pieces over time, how they kind of naturally start to play and collect and what they look like as they're sitting next to each other, right? You can do these invitations in your journal, or you can do them on loose pieces of paper, whatever feels good for you. So I hope that you really love this idea, or that it sparks an idea for you that is even better, and that you play with simple things. Take care. Bye-bye.